This morning, we had a first responder as the first witness on the stand, 3 witnesses so far, first responder and 2 officers. The first responder was a firefighter and paramedic that pretty much testified to the severity of the wounds once he arrived to Austin Metcalf's body, and just talked about the intense life-saving efforts they went through trying to revive him, to which, of course, to no avail. But they talked about, attaching a machine to his chest to read a pulse, and he had no pulse. They said it was flatline. There was an acronym he used, a medical term, and the prosecutor asked for, simplicity for the lay people in the gallery, and he just said, yeah, he had no pulse. He was pretty much dead in a cardiac sense. They loaded him up into the back of the ambulance, to which, he eventually did not regain consciousness.
One stab, straight through the heart. Austin Metcalf was 17 years old. He had a 3.97 GPA, a future, a twin brother who would eventually walk across a graduation stage and collect his diploma for him. None of that matters to a knife blade. This is the Karmelo Anthony case. And right now, as you're watching this, a jury in Texas is deciding whether what happened that morning was murder or self-defense. Let's go through exactly what happened. Every detail, every witness, every piece of evidence that came out in that courtroom. Frisco, Texas, one of the wealthiest, safest cities in America. The kind of place where nothing is supposed to happen. David Kuykendall Stadium, a regional high school track meet. Coaches, parents, athletes, hundreds of people filling the bleachers on a Wednesday morning. Karmelo Anthony is 17, a student at Centennial High School. He shows up that morning with a backpack. Inside that backpack, Cheez-Its, a hair pick, a vocabulary assignment, word puzzles, a cross necklace, and a knife, a 3.5-inch multi-tool blade. Nobody at that track meet knew about the knife. Not yet. Austin Metcalf is also 17. Memorial High School. One of their top athletes, his coach, Rob Starr, is somewhere nearby. Except at the exact moment everything went wrong, he wasn't at his team's tent. That detail matters. Karmelo Anthony is sitting inside Memorial High School's team tent. Not his team, not his space. Austin Metcalf walks over, tells him to move. Simple. Direct. What happens next? This is where the entire case lives. According to witnesses, Anthony looked up and said 5 words. Touch me and find out. Not backing down, not leaving. A warning or a dare, depending on which side of this courtroom you're standing on. One witness, a teenager who was standing right there, told jurors he initially thought the knife was a bluff. That when Anthony reached into that backpack, nobody expected him to actually use it. Austin Metcalf pushed or grabbed Anthony, trying to remove him. Anthony pulled the knife. 1 stab. The blade went 2 inches deep, through the sternum, straight into the right ventricle of Austin Metcalf's heart. Collin County Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Elizabeth Ventura testified the wound was gaping, 2.5 inches in length, completely unsurvivable. The judge warned the courtroom before she testified that the details would be graphic. Austin's family stood up and walked out before she finished. NBC News, Austin Metcalf collapsed at the scene, his face turned purple. His coach found him on the ground with a hole in his chest. There was nothing anyone could do. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Karmelo Anthony dropped the knife and ran. He surrendered to police shortly after. He was arrested. Initially held on a $1 million bond, later reduced to $250,000. He was released on house arrest with an ankle monitor. That right there, dropping the knife, running, became one of the most debated facts in this entire trial. The prosecution says, innocent people don't flee. Self-defense doesn't end with you dropping the evidence and disappearing. The defense says, he was a terrified teenager in a moment of chaos. Running doesn't equal guilt. The Karmelo Anthony trial ran for almost 9 hours on day 3 alone, with about a dozen witnesses taking the stand, many of them breaking down in tears while testifying. NBC News, after presenting 21 witnesses, the prosecution rested its case. 21 people who watched, who responded, who examined, who processed, all telling the same story from different angles. Wikipedia criminalist Stefani Martin testified she arrived at the crime scene at 10:43 a.m. and collected the pocket knife, Anthony's clothing, and his backpack. Jurors were shown pictures of Anthony's gray sweatshirt with a small red stain. CBS News. A witness who saw the whole thing told jurors that Austin put his hand on Anthony's shoulder. Not a punch, not a swing, more of a warning push. The defense jumped on that because under Texas law, self-defense requires a reasonable belief that you were in danger of serious bodily harm. Was a shoulder grab enough to justify a knife to the heart? The prosecution asked their final witness directly, was Karmelo Anthony acting in self-defense? The answer came back, no, that's lethal force against non-lethal force. The defense pushed back immediately. They moved for a directed
this morning,
verdict.
we had a first responder
arguing
as
the
first witness
state
on the
never
stand, 3
proved
witnesses
the
so
elements
far,
of
first responder
first-degree
and 2
murder
officers.
beyond a
The
reasonable
first responder
doubt.
was a firefighter and
judge denied
paramedic
it.
that
The
pretty much
trial
testified
moved
to the
forward.
severity
Anthony's
of
own
the
coach
wounds once
at
he arrived at
Centennial,
Austin Metcalf's
Adam
body,
Linwood,
and just talked about
testified
the
he was
intense
unaware
life-saving
of any
efforts they went
rule
through
prohibiting
trying to
athletes
revive
from
him,
sitting
to which,
under
of
another
course, to no
school's
avail.
tent.
But they talked about,
But when the
attaching
prosecutor
a
showed
machine
him a
to his
knife
chest to read a pulse
replica and
he had
asked
no
whether
pulse.
there
They
was
said it
any reason
flatlined.
for
There was
an
acronym
athlete
he
to
used,
bring
the medical
one to a
term,
track
and
meet.
the prosecutor
Linwood
asked for
said no.
simplicity for
Carmelo
the lay people in the
Anthony is
gallery,
black.
and he just said,
Austin
he had
Metcalf
no pulse. He was pretty
white.
much
This case
dead in a
exploded
cardiac
on
sense. They
social
loaded him
media
up
the
into
moment
back
it
of the
happened.
ambulance, to
Threats
which,
were
he
made.
eventually
Protests
did not
were
regain
held outside the courthouse. During jury selection, the prosecutor said he had never, in his entire career, been forced to have such an explicit conversation about race with a jury panel. Despite that conversation, no black jurors were seated for this trial. Anthony faces 5 to 99 years in prison if convicted. He is 19 years old now. Austin Metcalf's twin brother Hunter graduated this year and walked across the stage to collect his brother's diploma. The defense begins presenting its case Monday morning. And somewhere in that courtroom, 12 jurors are sitting with the weight of 2 families, 1 knife, and 1 question that has no clean answer. When does fear become murder? Self-defense or murder? Drop your verdict below.